Hey everybody, welcome to Scroll-Driven Multicolored Line Indicators. In today's lesson, we're going to explore this Vega Webflow template and pay particular attention to this section right here, where as I scroll, you'll see that this orange indicator line sort of follows where I am. After poking around a bit, we're going to build this multicolored line effect. And along the journey of building it, I want to show you where I kind of went wrong with my initial assumptions. So sit back, watch, there's a ton to learn today as we build this fun effect. Oh hey, and real quick, if you could just take 1 second and like this video and subscribe to the channel, that would be a big help. Thank you so much. Now there are a few things I want to point out about this effect, alright? Most importantly, you will see that the line does go from one section to the next. And also you'll notice that when the page stops scrolling, the line sort of keeps moving, okay? So we have this little bit of easing going on where the line catches up to the scroll position. Now the biggest question I had when exploring this was, is this one orange line that just moves throughout all these different sections and maybe gets hidden behind something here? Or does each section have its own line? Well, to find out, we can always just do a little bit of an inspection. And you'll see that we have all these different step sections, okay? And if we go into, let's say, step 3 here and crack it open, you'll see there is a step number div, and inside of there, we have the number, and then we have this step progress, all right? And you'll notice that as I scroll the page, that step progress is having its Y position changed, all right? So we know that this section has its own step progress, and if I go into the next step, crack open step number, you'll see that as I go from 3 to 4, that there are in fact 2 different line indicators that are moving, okay? So each of these sections has its own step progress element. And furthermore, it's important to note that as I scroll slowly, we get the illusion that the line can be in 2 separate sections. But really what we're seeing is the step 3 line going away and the step 4 line coming into view here. So now knowing that each section has its own line, that the line can appear to be in different sections, and also that the line will sort of keep moving after I'm done scrolling, let's go ahead and try to recreate this. So let's start out with our basic file setup. The first thing we have is a spacer div with this scroll down text. More importantly, we have this line section div that has a number 0 in it right now. I'm going to switch that over to a 1 just so you can see exactly what it is, and it looks just like a rectangle and this thing which is right next to it, which is our line holder. You'll see the line holder has a lighter gray background and it is 200 pixels tall. I'm going to go ahead over here and paste in a line which has an orange background and is 100 pixels tall. So what we want to do is take this line and move it up so that we can't see it to a -100 and animate it down to a Y of 200. Now to animate between those values, we'll just head over to our JavaScript panel, and I'm going to add this GSAP tween that's going to animate from a -100 to 200 along the Y axis. Now I have this repeat 20 in here just so you can see the animation while I'm speaking. Now we don't want to see the line when it's outside the line holder at the top or at the bottom. So that's just a simple CSS fix by going into our line holder and adding in overflow hidden. And now we'll see that we only see the line when it's inside the bounds of the line holder. And this is exactly what we need before we get into our next step, which is hooking up the animation to a scroll trigger. So to do that, we're going to get rid of this repeating tween and we're going to paste in this basic scroll trigger code. At this point in the course, I really shouldn't have to go over all of this. Just want to point out the main things, that our trigger is going to be the line section element, and we're going to start the animation when the top of the trigger reaches 300 pixels down from the top of the browser window. And for the end position, we're going to wait for the bottom of the trigger element to also reach 300 pixels down from the top of the browser window. We've got our markers set to true. We're using the same tween that we had before, and of course, scrub is set to true. So now, as I scroll down, you'll see that when that start passes scroller start, our animation starts with the line coming down, and it's going to end exactly when the bottom reaches that boom 300 pixel point. Now, if I go back the other way, then you see the line going to the top. So with just that little basic ScrollTrigger code, I have what I thought would be the fundamentals of this effect all figured out. So let's go ahead and see what happens when we apply this effect to multiple elements. Here I have a file where I made some modifications to the HTML. As you can see now, we have line section 1, and I've just made a few copies all the way down to line section 5. They all have the same format as previously. But now you'll see that when I scroll down, we have these 5 different sections with their lines inside their line holders. Now in the JavaScript, I'm just going to build it up quickly step by step. The first thing we're going to do is create an array of all the line section elements. Then I'm going to create this loop here where we're going to loop through each of the line sections. And inside the loop, we're going to use this code here where we're going to declare a line variable, which is going to be the line element inside the current section. We'll then create a scroll trigger, which uses the current section as the trigger. We'll use the same start and end values as before, and the animation here is going to be using the current line for the current iteration of the loop. So now I can go over here, and as I scrub down, you'll see that the line 1 indicator comes in, it goes all the way out, and then the 2, and then the 3, and then the 4, and all the way down the line. So with the current settings, I want to point out that the orange line is going to go fully through the current section before showing up in the next section. Now in the template we're trying to replicate, the line could be leaving the first section and going into the next section at the same time. Well, the way we're going to adjust that is by changing the end value, okay? And to make it appear that the line goes into this next one, we want to make sure that each line is visible for a little bit longer. So for the end value, we're going to make this now, we'll say 200. And notice how the scroller end moved up a little bit. So what that means is that while the 1 is still animating in, the 2 has already begun, all right? The animation on 1 isn't going to end until this end here reaches scroller end. So keep an eye there. And now you'll see that the first indicator is fully gone, but we're already sort of halfway into the second one. And so that's going to work all the way down the page, all right? The key here is that we've increased the amount of distance we need to scrub for each animation. Now, what can happen here is that we can take this a little bit too far. If I take this scroller end and move it up the page more, let's just make this a 50, you'll see now that, watch what happens. We start the animation here, it's still going, but the next one started too soon. Look, there's this little gap. It sort of breaks the line, all right? We always want the illusion of a continuous single line. But right now, the line can be ending here and then starting here, and that looks just a little bit weird. So with all things, you always have to play with the numbers. I might go ahead and make this 150. And how does this look? It's all about feel. I kind of like the way that's looking right now, but you can adjust it to how you like. Now, when I got to this point in my own personal exploration of this effect, I was quite happy and pretty much certain I was close to done. Well, the one last thing I needed to add broke it all. I wanted to add that little bit of easing so that when I stopped scrubbing, the line would sort of take a little time to catch up to my scroll position. And right now you'll see that it's stopping exactly when I stop scrolling. In most situations, we would just take the scrub value and set it to a number. So if I set it to 1, that means it's going to take 1 second for the animations to catch up. So now when I scroll a little bit, watch, when I stop, you'll see there's a little bit of extra action going on. It looks really kind of nice. However, watch what happens when I go into multiple sections. You're going to see that there are remnants of the lines left in the sections I was just in, all right? The problem here is that I have multiple animations that are trying to catch up. And if I go from 2 to 4 here, you're going to see it going through 3 and 2, and it's going to be all over the place. So the main problem we have to solve is having multiple scroll triggers working independently on their own animations. And so the solution is going to be creating one scroll trigger that scrubs one staggered animation. So I'm going to start off with sort of a clean slate by getting rid of all the JavaScript. And in the HTML in this file, I just want to point out that all the line sections are going to be wrapped now in a line sections div. And we're going to use this line sections wrapper as our scroll triggers trigger, so that when the top of line sections gets to a certain point, we're going to start scrubbing through a staggered animation that works on all the individual lines. And then when we get to the bottom of that trigger, the scrubbed animation is going to stop. So let's go into our JavaScript here, and I'm going to add in that animation code. Now this is just a self-running animation. I'm just scrolling so we can keep up with it, that staggers each one of the lines going from that y -100 to a y of 200 with a duration of 1 and a stagger of 1. So basically each line is going to play through its animation before the next one starts. Let me just do another rerun of that, and as soon as it loads, I'll just scroll down the page and try to keep up with it. So again, it looks like the line is going through each section, but it's multiple lines in a staggered fashion. Now the trick is going to be hooking this up to a scroll trigger. So let me just add this code here, which, as I told you, was going to use line sections as the trigger. We'll start it when its top gets to 300 pixels down from the top of the browser window, and we'll end it when the bottom gets to that same point. We've got our marker set, the animation is our animation, and scrub now is set to 1. So what that means is that when I scrub, you'll see that when I stop, we still get the line sort of easing into position, but I don't see the line in multiple cut off states in different sections. All right, this actually looks really quite good. The only thing I want to change here is that you will notice that as I leave 1, notice that I have to fully leave 1 before it gets into section 2. The way we adjust that with this setup is that we're going to change the stagger amount. And instead of having each of the animations play directly one after another, we're going to just add a little bit of overlap. So I'm going to make this 0.7, and now you'll see that as I scroll down and 1 goes into 2, you'll see that it can be in multiple sections at the same time, and it almost makes it look like it's one continuous line. All right, so you can play with that value, but right now I love that when I stop scrolling, we have that little bit of an overshoot caused by the scrub 1 value, and it's doing pretty much everything I want it to do. Now you may say, Carl, why didn't you just do this from the start? And you know why? Because I didn't think of it, all right? What I showed you was what I thought was the logical way to get here. And again, it wasn't until the end when I set this scrub to a numeric value that I realized there was a problem. So as a teacher, I hope it's helpful to you to see the thinking process that goes into building these things, all right? I can't just instantly look at things and know how they're built. It takes some experimenting, and a lot of times I do a lot of the wrong stuff too. So hopefully you found value in going on the journey. And there's really nothing wrong with, the first way I started out. It worked great up until a point. It's just that sometimes we want to add that extra flair. We realize there was some sort of error in our thinking. Now, before I wrap things up, let me add a little extra color flair. And to do that, I'm going to use a trick we've used before. We're going to first set up an array of colors, and then next use a GSAP set that targets each line and changes its background color by looping through all the colors in the array because we passed it into gsap.utils.wrap. So now when I scroll down, you'll see that each section has its own color, and you'll see that it appears that sort of the line can be in multiple sections and be multiple colors, and it just looks really kind of slick, all right? I love it. And again, yes, we're using less code than we started out with in our journey, but I hope you appreciate the many different ways to get to a solution. And ultimately, we ended up with a solution that was really quite flexible and did everything that we want. And And I'm just thrilled with this, and I hope you get to use this in your project and add your own little tweaks. See you in the next lesson. Hey everybody, Carl Schoof here. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I think it's a great example of the type of video I release every week to my Creative Coding Club students. I've got a ton here on YouTube that you can learn from me, but if you really want to get serious about GSAP and become a better creative developer and really master GSAP animation, please check out Creative Coding Club. I cover everything from GSAP basics, advanced timelines, all my favorite tricks, lots about SVG animation, ScrollTrigger, and so much more. So if you want to support this channel, the best thing to do is join Creative Coding Club today for less than $3 a month. If you want to go for life, I got affordable plans too. So again, thanks for watching the video. I've got more coming here on YouTube, and I'd love to see you in Creative Coding Club. Have a great day.